I have this brilliant quote, which is one of my favorite, which you say, publicly private, which you and Wendy also named your company, which to me is one of the most beautiful names and great names for a company. Could you describe the context of that quote and what it means to you? Because it's a great thing about acting, when you came up with the quote.
I began my career, when I left Philadelphia, I quit college in 1956, January of 57, and I started to go to movies. I was never taken much by movies, or I had never acted in my life. And I was touched that the people on the screen were touching me. And I said, I'd like to be able to do that. So I started my career. There were three things you did when you went. I went a month to a dramatic school in Philadelphia, and there were three things that you learned in your own head. One, go to New York. Two, work for Kazan. Three, become a member of the Actors Studio. And those were the three things I did. And luckily, Mr. Kazan saw my audition for the Actors Studio and put me under contract. We had 5 people that were under contract, Mr. Kazan. I was the baby of the group. Rip Torn, Pat Hingle, Geraldine Page, Bruce Dern, and Lee Remick. And Lee Remick was actually, I think, the same age I was. But he had discovered her in Arkansas when he made A Face in the Crowd, and she became the young girl in A Face in the Crowd. But she was just the head drum majorette in the high school band, and he saw her and he said, you know. So during that time, I got to know Mr. Strasberg real well, and Gadge, of course, real well. And I started formulating my own ideas. And as I started my career in Hollywood, I realized that about 20% of the time, I was authentically honest and real on the screen. 80% I wasn't. And I did a movie in 1991 called After Dark, My Sweet, in which Jason Patric gives a brilliant performance. I mean, he'd been in Lost Boys, but that was his first movie, and Rachel Ward was very good. A guy named James Foley directed it. And I got up to about 45%. And when I first read the script 9 years ago from Alexander, I said the only way I can do this role is to be 100% honest throughout the film. No acting. Well, the way you do that is you have the courage to become publicly private. In other words, when they turn the switch on, you've got to be able to open your heart, open your soul, and let come out what's ever in there, good, bad, or anything else, because that's even with the glasses and the dress and the bag, you could star in a film or in a play any day you want to if you have the guts to tell your story. I don't mean out loud, through a character or anything else, because it's something you have that nobody else has. And that's why so many actors get into the business, whether it's here in California or whatever, trying to imitate what other actors have done, a style that they've seen. Or in my generation, they all wanted to be Jimmy Dean, you know. And then the girls in the late 60s and 70s and into the 80s wanted to be Meryl Streep, and they wanted, you know, or Geraldine Page when they were younger. No, have the guts and the courage to be yourself. And that's what publicly private is. Because when you get on the stage or in front and the switch is on, we've just about seen it all. But what we haven't seen is you. And if you can dare to put that on the screen, then you might just have something. And I went to Alexander after he gave me the role, and I said, I'm tired of acting. But I want to be a real person in a movie, and I'm going to only be real people from now on. So he said to me, okay, he'd already given me the part. He said, you have more going on than any actor I've ever seen, particularly when the switch goes on, automatically you shift into a different gear, you pick up on everything, you see everything, you're very quick, so forth and so on. The first day I got to the set, Alexander walked up to me and he said, Bruce, he said, this is Faden Papa Michael. He's a cinematographer. My name's Alexander Payne, and I'm your director. I want you to do something for us that you've probably never done in our entire career, in your entire career. I said, yes, sir, what's that? He says, let us do our jobs. And I said, I got it. He said, you've always had so much going on. Don't show us anything in the movie, we will find it. And no one had ever said that to me, and I never had the trust to put in a director to let that be said to me and then go with it. I mean, I've had, great directors, really great directors. I mean, I had more freedom with Mr. Hitchcock than I had with anybody until Alexander Payne. I mean, he said, I asked him one day on Family Plot, I said, why me, Hitch? He said, well, first of all, Bruce, Mr. Paquino wanted $1 million. All names like that, he pronounced in the syllables. He didn't say Pacino, he said Paquino. And he said, and I said, that's it? No, he said, in my office, I have 1,240 perfect frames, but none of them are entertaining. So he says, you're entertaining and no one knows what you're going to do next. So that's why you're here. So shut up and pull your oar. That's the way he talked and everything, but that's what I meant. And I'm not tired of acting. I'm just tired of doing, and I don't mean to put down the conventional thing. If you let me just diverse 1 second. My first play on Broadway was called Shadow of a Gunman. It's a Sean O'Casey play, and it was an actor studio production on Broadway, the first time they had ever done a play on Broadway or risked it. After 17 days of rehearsal, Mr. Strasberg and Mr. Kazan came in along with Cheryl Crawford, who was the producer of the play, and said, what's going on? Jack Garfine was the director. And Jack says, well, we're still working on relationships. And Lee said, what? He said, the Actors Studio is opening this play on Broadway in 8 days and you're sitting around a table working on relationships? He said to all of us, there were 8 of us in the cast, you go on, including his daughter Susan, who was the star of the play, female star. You guys go on and have a late breakfast, and when you come back, I want you back here at 12 o'clock. I'm gonna stage this son of a bitch by 4:30. So I got excited when I walked out. I said, wait a second, this is what I came here for. And he staged the play in 4.5 hours. 7 days later, we were on Broadway. Mrs. O'Casey came over for it. It was a big deal because it was the Actors Studio. And Joel Schenker, who was a big businessman in New York at that time, was one of the backers of it, and so forth and so on. And every night, once the play opened, outside the theater, at the theater next to us, a big limousine would come up. And a great big man, about 6'7" with a bald head, would get out of the back seat with 2 pink poodles in each arm. Out of the front seat got a little frail woman, probably not over 5 feet tall, in her late 80s, with 2 pink poodles in each hand. And they walked into the theater. And I love theater in life. I mean, opera really in life. And I don't mean I couldn't sit through an opera, but I love the opera in life. The opening of the Olympic Games, that's opera. When we all go to a ball game and stand to sing the anthem, that's opera to me. And Kazan said, what do you sit out there all the time for? I said, you be here tomorrow night at, I looked at my watch, 7:20, and you'll see opera. The next night he was there, he said, this better be fucking good opera. And I said, and just at that minute, the big limousine comes up. Exact same thing I've seen. Big man, little lady, and they go into the theater. And I turned around and looked at Elia Kazan, at that time as great a director as America had, in theater and in film. And he had tears running down his face.